Hello and welcome to Fresh Foraged. I'm your host, Carolyn Dugas, and today we're going to be taking a peek at the wineberry, cousin to the blackberry and the raspberry. Similarly to these beloved cultivated berries, the wineberry grows quite of its own accord, taking over roadsides, hillsides, any side it can get a hold of. Luckily, they are quite scrumptious, with a taste of a freshly picked strawberry. Now I'm not talking about those store-bought water bags, the actual, honest-to-goodness, your neighbor grew this and is letting you raid the strawberry patch like a little bunny rabbit, actual strawberries. The flavor is sensational, and people are literally tearing them down, trying to get rid of them. We'll get more into why later. So join me as we learn how to find and ID wineberries. They basically look like tiny orange raspberries with red thorns. And then we'll wander on over to the kitchen where we'll learn how to whip up a wild Wineberry Shirley Temple featuring homemade Grenadine syrup seasoned with foraged spiceberries. Yeah, that's right, y'all. This is a multi-seasonal foraging recipe. So fire up your time traveling machine and let's get learning. Wineberries belong to a group known as brambleberries, which refers to members of the genus Rubus. We've got a whole mess of berries hanging out in Rubus land. We got salmonberries, thimbleberries, bimbleberries. Brambleberry is just a term for the whole lot of them. They typically have long arching canes which pop up in year 1. Then in year 2, they produce some tasty fruits. Year 3, they've gone to brambleberry heaven. And fun fact, each berry, it's not one fruit, it's not 2 fruits. It's an entire cluster of teeny tiny little fruits, each containing one even teenier seed that will definitely get stuck in your teeth. So each little berry bump is one self-contained fruit. They just like sticking together, and they typically hang out on what is known as a receptacle. In this case, a berry receptacle. If you've ever picked a raspberry or a wineberry, it's the pokey cone that remains attached to the cane after you pick the berry. Although in some brambleberries, the receptacle, it's tired of hanging out in the garden. It wants to see the world, check out your digestive system, so it comes along for the ride. Such is the case for blackberries. Now you may be wondering, where do these wineberries come from? How could something so delicious be possibly popping up in my park? Well, they're native to areas in China, Japan, and Korea, and were purportedly brought over to the US way back in 1890 as a breeding stock for blackberries. However, nobody really thought this through because now the wineberry is actually taking over the eastern part of the United States. And I saw it hitchhiking the other day. It looked like it was trying to head west. Much like our other invasive friends, wineberries pull the old dense thicket maneuver where they crowd out other plants and basically start to take over sunny and damp places. This is complicated even further by the spiky canes, which will definitely scratch you up if you try and mess with them. Luckily, one thing you can do to help prevent the spread of this invasive plant is to eat the heck out of them. One of the main ways they spread is by seeds, which are gobbled up by the birds and then redistributed indiscriminately across the land. So as long as you aren't spitting those seeds out as you walk around, post-wineberry munch, you're helping to keep the wineberry population in check. Now that we've covered some basic wineberry info, let's get botanizing. Wineberries, also known as Rubus phoenicolasius, are a member of the ever-so-popular rose family. This means that they have 5 petals, 5 sepals, and a whole lot of stamens. This makes for a very distinctive botanical family pattern. Many of humanity's favorite foods belong to the rose family, such as apples, pears, strawberries, almonds, and more. Members of the rose family often have alternate leaves, which is true for wineberries. Now, wineberry leaves are actually compound leaves made up of 3 leaflets that have a distinctive silvery underside. They're borne on leaf stalks that are covered with spines and red hairs, much like the canes and twigs. This gives the whole plant a sort of red, hazy look when viewed from a distance. Wineberries tend to flower in late spring, and they have 5 petals that look sort of like tiny white hearts. Wineberries, they're just full of love. You can see the little green sepals behind them forming a sort of Grinchy star, and then the stamens clustered in the middle. Once the flowers are pollinated, the sepals close right up like a tiny Grinch hand, and the berry forms behind closed doors, taunting us as it grows. Then finally, in midsummer, the berries burst forth in their full glory. Now here is a very important harvesting tip for the wineberry. Yes, you may want to just grab the first wineberry you see, expecting it to be full of flavor, but you need to let them mature a little bit. Much like the strawberry, if you harvest them too soon, they'll be tart and relatively flavorless, but if you wait a few days until they're deeply red, they will treat you to the full wineberry experience. Fully ripe berries will slip easily off of their orange receptacles. Now just a little FYI, when you harvest them, the berries are quite sticky. Not sticky like sugar sticky, but sticky like low-quality tape sticky. So don't be alarmed, it washes right off. So to recap, the most important ID tips for the wineberry are that it looks like a bright reddish-orange raspberry, and it has fuzzy, spiky red stems. Those are the big two. Everything else will help confirm your ID, but those two will get you started. So let's grab a small handful of wineberries and we'll work our way on over to the kitchen. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. Today we'll be making a wild Wineberry Shirley Temple with some fancy homemade grenadine, which is easier to make than you might think. You can also use it in all sorts of alcoholic drinks. This particular drink is inspired by the sickly sweet concoctions of my youth. My sister and I used to make Shirley Temples all the time as kids, out of 7-Up, electric red grenadine, and maraschino cherries. Basically a straight-up sugar bomb. So this is my foraging version of the Shirley Temple for the adult in the know. Besides the foraged wineberries, this drink features a homemade grenadine that's flavored with foraged spiceberries, the fruit of Lindera benzoin, also known as the spicebush. The berries ripen in the fall and have a delightfully complex flavor, sort of like a mixture of orange zest, allspice, and other warming spices. I tend to pick a whole lot of spiceberries in the fall, then stash them in my freezer like a squirrel for future use. Now I'm not going to be covering Spicebush ID in this video because the berries aren't ready yet, so if you don't have any spiceberries lying around, you can swap them out for approximately half an orange's worth of zest, or just freeze some wineberries and wait until fall. So let's get grenadine in. This is not the sickly red grenadine of your youth, a sugar injection to the soul. This grenadine goes way back to its roots, and by that I mean its etymological roots of the word grenadine. Grenadine comes from the word grenade or grenade, which is French for pomegranate. This grenadine is made from actual pomegranate juice, which gives it a deep and tart flavor and a naturally maroon color. This particular recipe is adapted from This Is Camino, and you can find the full Spiceberry Grenadine and Shirley Temple recipe on my website, www.freshandforage.com. So to start out, we're going to bring 2 cups of pomegranate juice to a boil, then reduce the heat and simmer for about 15 to 20 minutes, or until the liquid is reduced to 1 cup. If you've accidentally boiled it too far, that's fine, do not fear. Just add enough hot water to bring the volume back up to 1 cup total. Once we've got our cup of hot steaming pomegranate concentrate, we're going to toss in a ½ cup of sugar, a tablespoon of lemon juice, and 10 crushed spiceberries. Now this is just enough spiceberry to give a nice complex background note to the grenadine, but feel free to use more if you would like the flavor to be more prominent. Now we're going to let this whole hot mess infuse for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to strain out all the floaties with a fine mesh strainer. And there we have it, homemade grenadine! You can store it in the fridge for quite a while. Now to make our adult Shirley Temples, I'm just going to demo with one teeny tiny little drink since this recipe is scalable. You can adjust the ratio and make these for a crowd, or just one little treat for yourself. So we'll start out by extracting the juice from about 20 wineberries since they are full of flavor and of course seeds. I like to just smush them through a fine mesh strainer with a spoon. For large quantities, a food mill would work nicely, or even a potato ricer lined with cheesecloth. To the wineberry juice, add 6 ounces of unflavored sparkling water and 2 teaspoons of your spiceberry grenadine. Give that all a stir, and you can plop in some ice cubes and garnish with a wineberry. Alright, let's give this newfangled Shirley Temple a try. A wonderful balance of the fresh wineberries and the deep tart flavor of the pomegranates. Cheers. I hope you've enjoyed this multi-seasonal foraging recipe starring the extremely invasive and extremely delicious Wineberry. Let me know in the comments if you've enjoyed this updated take on the Shirley Temple, or if nostalgia still got its icy cold grip on your heart and it just won't let go. If you've enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe as we explore more flavorful foraging content featuring abundant and invasive plants. Happy foraging!